This meeting is being recorded.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a blank sheet of paper. So we're going to draw our sort of winter gate, and I've got a selection of different pencil colours that I'm going to use. You can adapt these if you don't have the ones that particular ones I'm using here. I'm going to start off, I've got a nice sort of pale ice blue colour. Oh, someone in the waiting room. So I've got a nice cool ice blue colour, and normally when we would sketch something like this out, we would use, you know, a H pencil if we were doing this in black and white, but we're going to use a pale blue. You're going to press really lightly with this to start off with. I'm going to press quite hard so that you can see it, but you're really just using sketch marks, so really lightly. I'm going to so you can use this particular picture. You can use landscape or portrait. You just kind of spread out to the sides depending on what you want. But whatever way you're doing it, I'm going to start off by dividing my paper into thirds, and I just want a bit of a guideline. So that shows up good. Give myself a horizon about a third of the way up from the bottom. Doesn't have to be perfect, we just want it horizontal to the bottom of the paper. A really good little trick for getting a good horizontal line is using, even when you're painting, use a pencil, run it along the bottom, pinch it where you want your line to be, move it across, and I just, where the top of my thumb is, I put my little marks in, and then I can join those up and get myself a nice horizon line. Okay. From there, we are going to go up. I'm going to divide this by roughly, oh, someone else in the waiting room. I'm going to give myself probably, I'd say about 5 centimetres. Obviously, that's relative to the size of the paper and the whether you've got it landscape or portrait. But we're going to, basically, this is our horizon. And again, you can do the same thing to get your fence. So I've, again, pinched it and I'm running my thumb along, putting those marks in, and then I'm very lightly gonna give myself my fence line. So this is quite rustic, so it's a bit up and down. That's fine. Okay. I'm going to find roughly the middle of my paper, and I'm going to give myself the location of my gate. So again, really light strokes, like light marks. You're just giving yourself something to work with. I'm going to give myself a nice little post either side. And then, again, using the same trick as we did before for getting these nice and even, I'm going to turn my pencil the other way, and I'm going to, again, pinch, line up my thumb, or my finger, and I can give myself even spaces for my fence posts. So that's quite a good little cheat to get roughly even spacing or horizontal or vertical lines. So I'm then gonna come along and put in my fence posts, my uprights. We then, so different fences do, you know, you have different things. We can give ourselves, so that's my gate. I'm going to skip over that, and put in the top post of my post and rail fencing. And then we want to put in another one lower down. You don't want it sitting on the floor. You want a bit of a gap. So I'm going to just come up, quite a small little gap above, and then another line above that. That gives us the lower rail for our fencing. And I just sketch it out towards the edges. So we've got our horizon line, we've got our lower rail, our higher rail, we've got our gate. So just so that I know for later on, I'm going to curve the top of that gate. And when we come to actually put in our snow, we're going to add it on top of the posts that we've got there. Next thing I'm going to do is just sketch in. There's a very faint kind of tree line to create a bit of depth. So still using your very light pencil strokes, I'm gonna kind of bring the picture in so that my point of focus is here in the middle. So I'm going to come in like this either side, almost like drawing clouds, really. Let me sketch that in a bit darker, as you can see. Don't want them to be identical, so have them finish slightly differently on each side. Okay, last thing we need to kind of plan in right now, we'll put the details in later, it's going to be the positioning of our trees, and we're going to keep doing that in our blue. And what we want to make sure we don't do is mirror images of each other. We want to mix those up a bit. So we can do that by having one on one side and two smaller ones on the other, or have one leaning, anything like that. You want them to sit lower than your fencing. So they're going to come, let's see, we might put one here. So I'll put in the base, and then I might lean him slightly. So I'm going to put in very, very narrow triangle. And then I'm going to start to put in the main parts of my branches. So I'm not going to put all the detail in right now, just want to get what I'm doing plotted out so that I know that I'm happy with the balance and the composition. For my one on this side, if I want this one, say, to be like very, very precisely vertical, I'm going to use my little trick again with my running the edge of my pencil along the side of the paper, and I can join that up. I'm going to make this just a little bit lower. Again, though, I want my little really narrow triangle. I'm going to give my pencil a quick sharpen. It's starting to get blunt. And then I again can put in my main branches. And then, because I want to have them uneven, I might put like a young tree in the background. I might want that, again, because we're trying to create a bit of depth, I would want that to be a little bit higher sitting on the paper than this one that's in front of it. So I might come out a little bit. I can cover part of this upright post that sits behind it, and because of the way we'll shade it, we will give depth to that later on. So I'm going to have my triangle here, and then I can have a few branches that maybe interact and cross into the tree next to it, but not too many. Okay, I'm then going to just, final thing, just give myself very pale mark again to remind myself my reef's going to be there later on. And I'm also going to give myself 2 fat little robins. These 2 circles are sitting above the top of the post because we're going to put snow in. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is turn our pencil on our side. Make sure it's nice and sharp. So if you want to give it a little sharpen before we go, it's a good idea too. And we are going to very lightly start to shade in, fading out particularly. You can go all loose and sketchy out towards the edges of your picture, and then you can start to fill in a little more heavily. I'm kind of fading it around the edge of the fence because I'm going to put snow on the top of that, and we can fade that out. And again, I'm just going to then just sketch that shading out towards the outside of the paper. I'm then, just to create a little bit of a kind of wintry sky, I've got a slightly different shade of blue. It's a slightly more greeny blue shade, and I'm going to do exactly the same, just very light strokes. Just going over, and we can go, I would personally go over like maybe like one side. Change the tone of your blue from one side of your picture to the other, because there would be different tones across a picture. So what you can do as well, you won't get as much of a smudge with coloured pencils as you will with graphite, but you can still soften it a little bit. If you've gone too heavy, a white pencil scribbled over the top will lighten some of that for you too. So we've got our sky, we've got a real sort of little background, little bit of depth going on to our picture. And then while we're using that colour, we're going to start to put in a bit of shadow. So I'm going to use those colours that I've used before, the sort of ice blue and the duck eggy blue. And where I put my horizon line, I'm just going to, now this is where the camera makes this tricky for me. I'm going to use my wrong hand and I'm going to sketch. And this time I can fill in a little bit more strong, a little bit stronger, a little bit more pressure than I've used up here. This was light and sketchy and just suggesting that there's a bit of background in there. And I can start to bring that down a little bit. So we've got a little bit of a horizon. We're then going to decide which direction our light is coming from. Even on a hazy day, hazy winter day like this, you're still, you know, it's a bit foggy, a bit misty, still going to have some form of shadow, and you're going to have a direction that your sun's coming in. Because I'm darker this side, I'm going to have this as being more shadow, so my light's going to be coming from this direction. And again, using the side of my pencil, I'm going to shade. So I've got this big solid gate here that I can shade down. I'm going to just put in a little bit of a post always shading in the same direction. A little bit of something, and then same direction again. We're just going to put in some trees. If anything, I've probably gone a bit sharp with that. It would have probably been better, more at an angle, but there we go. Okay. And we can come back and make that a bit stronger if need be, but we know what we're working with now, and that's what we wanted. Now we can start to put in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to, because for me, the thing I'm likely to forget is putting the snow on the top of our post and rails. So what I want to do on the uprights like this, I'm going to put almost like a little cap on each one, that little funny kind of shape that you get. Even on the one behind our tree, each one make it slightly different. You can take some of them down to down the side of the post as well if you want to, like that. And then the snow that I'm going to put on the rails, I'm actually going to do not sitting on top of them like we've done with the caps of the posts. I'm going to put in below our rail. So we're going to have a bit of an uneven, slightly wobbly line, but then that gives us the difference between in height between the tops of the posts and our rails. And I'm going to do that. You can do on some of these, I would kind of lift that snow up. You know how it kind of sits funny on corners of things. There we go. And the last one, not too heavy, and just fade it out like that. If I now switch over to my pale sort of beigey brown colour, and I can fill this in. So I'm going to go in, first of all, fill in my posts. I'm going to leave the gate for a second, just get my posts in. Going to go in even behind that tree. Shade that in, and then come along underneath my snow. Blocking in. So if you don't have a beigey brown colour, you've only got sort of like a small selection of colours, just use a light pressure on one of the dark pencils, dark browns, and I would suggest then kind of going over it with some white or really pale grey if you've got some of that, and that will give you a similar kind of shade. Pencils are just like paints in that you can change the shades and by going over the top and layering them up. Right, with my sort of chocolate brown colour again, so we've got our light coming this way, so our darker shadows are going to be on the left hand side. So I want to go over these, but I don't want to go sort of like press so hard that they're as dark as they possibly can be. And then I'm just gonna very lightly, some lines going up and down. It's giving our wood some texture. As soon as your pencil starts to lose its sharpness, get straight in there with the sharpener, keep them consistent all the way along. So done those, give it a quick sharpen. Don't forget as well, you can turn that picture on its side if you find it easier. And then I'm going to go underneath. So my shadow is going to be dark under there, and also darkest where this rail meets the shadow of the post. I'm just darkening in those little joints here. You'll see that makes such a difference to starting to look a bit more 3D now. Just that little scribble there makes such a difference to it. And come along under here, a few little lines. And I am just literally just sketching those in, still quite lightly. Just like that. It's always a good idea with any kind of art just to have a quick look at it from a distance, just see if you're doing it's doing what you want it to do. So I'm quite happy with that. I think mine's looking nicely kind of 3D, looks like the snow is sitting on it. I will come in with some grey or some black and kind of put a little bit of shadow on the snow, but right now I'm happy with it. And you should never judge the contrast on something until you kind of sort of have some of the real darkest areas in there. Before I do my gate, what I want to do is put in my wreath, because I want, or at least sketch it in. So I'm going to use my pale green and my red. I'm going to start off with my red, and I've got this sort of big feature bow. This is quite apt for me today because I start my wreath making classes full on tonight. It's my first kind of proper one. I did a private one last week, but give some weight to this ribbon as well. Have it kind of dangling down, maybe sitting on what's going to be the inside of your wreath. And then I'm just going to basically, it's a big green polo sitting there. I'm at a bit of a strange angle, so it looks round to me, but when I look on the screen, it's not. And I'm just going to block that in. And then what I want to do is just put some kind of bobbles and bumpy bits around the edges of the inside and the out. You don't have to, it doesn't matter if you've got little bits of white showing through on that from the background. It doesn't matter if you haven't got it absolutely perfect. We can tweak it with some shading and things like that, but we want to get that in before we then come in with our brown. And I've got to leave myself a little bit of a gap again. And I'm going to then just block with the pale brown, the beigey colour, block all of this in, just like we did with the fence posts. Like that. Okay, this guy's going to have snow on, so we are going to again, just a little line sitting above, like we did with the cats. This is sitting that little bit higher than the rest of the rails, and almost forgot to put the brown in the inside of the reef. Okay, now I'm gonna just come in back to my dark brown and give these guys some detail, just a few little kind of ridges and a little bit of shadow underneath. I'm going to take this shadow out from the right hand side of the post, give it a little sharpen, and pop in a few little lines like that. Details on our fence, on our gate even. I'm going to just come along with my brown under my snow, put a little bit of shadow under there, and also under my reef. Go. Like I said, this is the bit where you can kind of correct it if you've gone a bit wrong, but don't get caught up with that being a solid shape or try and draw leaves or anything like that on it. You're just, it's a reef shaped drawing of something. You're not trying to draw the component parts of it. I'm going to switch over very quickly to my red. Got a really good vibrant deep red colour. I'm going to block everything in. You can put some little berries into your reef as well. And then going back to my dark brown, I'm going to basically a little U in the middle, a couple of little lines each side, and then all you need to do, a little shadow underneath the bottom of the bow. Don't worry too much about the ribbon. You can put a little suggestion again of some shadow, but you really don't need much on there. I will then, with my dark green, I'm basically just gonna do some little squiggly lines, some little, they're not anything, they're just little zigzaggy lines all over different directions, just to make it look a bit more like there's some texture and something happening in there. Okay, so we keep moving. We've got just over 15 minutes left, so we need to get on with those trees and our little robins. With my trees, what I did was I drew them in, we've sketched them in, but in the actual original you can still see the blue, because I didn't want too warm a brown. When I originally did it, the brown was quite jarring because it was very warm compared to the rest of the picture. So I've still got my ice blue colour, and I'm going to now come in and I want to draw in much more detail my tree. I'm going to start off, so each progressive branch will get thinner than the one before, and it really is, particularly if you struggle with trees, as I know a lot of people do, it's really worth looking at reference photos for trees, because they're definitely one of those things where you think they look like something and actually you can simplify them down much more. So I'm then gonna come in. We're not trying to draw every branch. or we're not going to try and draw all the thin ones. We're only going to be able to see the sort of to a certain point, and then they get so small that you just don't see them anymore. So in reality, this is a bit of a like a young tree to be kind of this sort of thin and not have that much detail. So and then branches will come. They're not a 2D object, they're 3D. So you'll have branches that cross over into each other, go in front of each other, and things like that. Get it to a certain point and then stop and work on your other ones. And then you can kind of look at it and muse on it compared to like once you've got the other ones in and you've got more of a whole picture. So again, starting with my little triangle, I'm gonna sharpen my pencil a little bit. The great thing about these kind of soft drawing pencils, you get lovely colour. The downside to them is that they need sharpening all the time. So starting to get those in, and then I can come in while I'm here and start to get in my second tree. So from a composition kind of perspective, you know, putting two trees on one side and one on the other, you know, probably would, some people be like, oh, it's quite unbalanced. A lot of it's to do with sort of the size of that you do with it, but actually it also makes it look, nature's not nature isn't balanced and symmetrical. So if we're trying to look as natural as possible, this kind of thing does help. I've now grabbed my brown, so this is my dark chocolatey brown again, and I'm gonna now start to work over my icy blue, and the combination of the blue and the brown gives you this nice sort of cold wintry tone. Which if you left and did this without the blue, you would find that you it's quite warm and jarring and just doesn't quite sit right. The other thing that's quite good with this, if you don't sort of press equally heavy on some of the thin branches and just do a light stroke, just give them a pencil and have a sharpen, because it's over that blue, the colder blue tone will show through more, and with the lightness of the pencil will then give you, it will push that branch away from you so that you then have a little bit more 3D. It's kind of doing quite a nice little job making your trees more 3D for you without having to worry too much. Okay, and then by the same token, if you then go in with your brown and put some in where you don't have the blue, press really hard, these will come out, they'll jump out towards you, these branches, and look like they're closer and on this side of the tree for you. Okay, so with our trees on the right hand side where we've got our 2, we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to apply that rule to these trees. So one of them, you're going to press the one that's closer, so the one that sits further down on the paper, you're going to press nice and hard. You're going to cover your blue, and this will again push this tree towards you. And your other tree, the one that's slightly set back, to give yourself another bit of depth. Again, creating realism in drawing or painting is about doing everything you can to repeat the same message. So to make things further away, you make it smaller, you make it simpler, you make it paler, you make it less intense colours. And I don't think it's really showing particularly at the moment on the screen, but on my paper I can see that this one definitely is darker and looking like it's closer. You can then, if you want to, really bring that forward by, again, on the side that we have our shadow, so that's always on the left hand side in this particular picture, we can put in, using a bit of black, a little bit of shadow, and we're just going to put the tiniest suggestion of a bit of shadow. And yeah, you can see that now. This one is pushed back, this one is coming forward towards us. Well, we've got our black in our hand. I'm just going to darken up very lightly, very light scribble, just where the most intense part of our shadows will be. Finally, we're going to pop in our robins. So I do love a cheeky little robin, who doesn't? So what we want to do, go back to our palest brown, make sure that it's really sharp. We've got those 2 little circles that we put in, which now we've put in our snow cap on the top, shouldn't be a million miles away from, so my 2 were here and here. Then there's just sitting above our snow, so just sort of big enough that we can stick a couple of little legs in. And again, we don't want our robins to be mirror images of each other, so we've got 2 bodies. I'm gonna have one, basically he's going to be like a little snowman, so I'm going to have a head on top, and we're going to make this lower, I move this up close to the camera so you can see. So I've made that into like a little teardrop shape. That's going to give us his body, and we're going to divide him in half. I'm going to do this with the red just so it's easier for you to see. So we're going to divide the top half of the face with a curved line, and then so we're going to have another little very narrow snowman, little squashed figure of 8. We can then, the underneath of his body, we fill that in with our pale brown. And then if you've got a reddy brown, or you can use your chocolate brown, I'm going to just darken his wing and the top of his head. And if you've got your black, you can just take a little bit there 2 little sticks for legs, a little eye in his red area, and then a little mark with a very sharp black pencil for his beak. Our guy on the right, he's kind of facing away but looking at the other robin. They're moaning about how cold it is and where's their breakfast. So again, a little snowman. The head is just ever so slightly angled over towards the left. I'm going to switch over to my red, and this time we've got the left hand half of the face is going to be red like that, but then it's going to come down and meet the right hand side. So it's the same shape as we drew over here, but it's just angled. So again, I'll bring that forward so you can see what I've done. There we go. We're going to do pale brown for other parts of our snowman that we haven't already shaded in. And then with our darker brown, we're going to do 2 little lines. These are his wings on either side. A little tail sticking out the side. And then just like before, 2 little black legs. Our eye is going to be again in the middle and with a very sharp pencil. You can do a little V for that one. So they really are having a conversation, these two. And then just tidy it up, a little bit of shading. And I'm going to also just darken the tops of both their heads. So look at that, with 2 minutes to spare. You can, with this, I mean, obviously, if you wanted to add a snowman or something like that, when we do the first initial sketching of the fence and things like that, put him in very first thing and then sketch everything else around him. And to just finish up, very, very light with a little bit of, it's better to use a brown, a grey than black, because you want to keep the contrast. But you can just come and just a little bit of here and there, not solid lines, a little bit of shading on your snow if you want to. You can put a little bit more shading under your reef. But you want to keep everything that's not the tree sort of mid-tones and not too dark, so that it keeps that sort of like that depth. So yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed that session. I've got 3 more Christmassy themed ones coming up over the next few weeks, and I believe my next one is this one. So I will be doing this on coloured paper. Any colour will work, even black, that's fine. You do need a really nice white pencil, whatever you want to do with that one. You need a nice white one, nice and soft. And then I think I've got the reindeer in the scarf, and then I have this one again. Any colour paper, you could do it on green and or black, or if you don't have coloured paper, you can still do it in white. That's no problem, Suzanne, you're very welcome. And yeah, so I haven't at the moment decided whether I'm going to carry on doing these in the new year, because the non-free ones are pretty dead. So I'll have to decide what I'm going to do. So they're not covering the costs that I have to pay for Zoom at the moment, so I'm not sure whether to carry on or not. So anyway, if I don't see you beforehand, I can't believe I'm saying this already, have a lovely Christmas. And if you don't already follow me on Facebook, please go over and have a look at Easily Does It. Or on our YouTube channel, we've got loads of free tutorials and some ones that you can pay for, and pays for my Christmas dinner. And yeah, so have a lovely afternoon. Get back to work, you lot. And hopefully I will see you very soon. Bye.